Well, hello there. I hope you're doing fine. I'm actually, wanted to try out this Let's Code session. So let's get started. Very welcome everybody who's on the show. You can just say hi in the chat and say whether everything's working. And yeah, I thought about hacking something on actually test containers with a local, somewhat not development but deployment workflow, because a few times in my testing courses and stuff I said how important it is to separate the life cycles. So today I thought, why not do that with my coffee testing stuff and project. So this is actually a post that I thought is interesting, and it has been on my task list for a while, from Sergey, who does a lot on test containers, who actually shows how to basically run test containers, like the actual Docker containers, from a separate runner. So this shows stuff for Spring, where you can actually run this more or less in a main method, which is the cool thing, that you actually can handle these things differently. So which means that you can start your test containers, your Docker containers, via a Java class. So in my testing things, and I opened, I actually have to see whether all of this is working here. I'm literally just putting this up. Yeah, it's system test and local run environment. So that's basically what I typically do. And I know it sounds super easy, but for me, that's just, the pragmatic way to say Docker run, Docker run, Docker run, to start up these 3 Docker containers, which in my case are 3 containers for my project. So a coffee shop, that's a main application that is a different external system, and a database, which we could do via test containers as well. So literally the thing is that is kind of cool with test containers, that it ships with for example some things that are aware for database technologies, such as Postgres. Then you don't have to have some liveness probes and things like that. So this script is a little bit just too pragmatic, because what I'm doing, I'm just waiting for a bunch of seconds to just make sure that kind of that probably the database is up and running. But of course, the better way would be to check for status. You can do that too in a shell script, but at some point it then just gets easier to do that with test containers. And I thought, why not just do that? So let me have a brief look at the chat actually, and I'm just about to see that. It's always interesting when you run a live stream to just have like different things open. And yeah, there we go. So I'm just saying hello in the chat, and just feel free to comment there as well. So actually what I wanted to try out is something similar to that we have something like a main main class that we can use to start up the tests and everything. So what I'm doing in my project is I start up my containers typically with a shell script, something like this. And then I want to have a similar thing with test containers. So how to do that? And literally, this is not meant as a presentation. So I just doing this live coding session to literally I have to Google stuff, and like everybody of us does. But I thought maybe it's interesting. Hi Floody. Yeah, that's cool that you like the topic test containers. Happy. And yeah, let's try this out. So what I typically would do here is to see how to get started in the first place, because the generic approach, I think that's what we want for this one. Because basically what we would like to have, the problem, or what I always tell people, is that if we do something like this, if we have that is a just test that is typically tangled as a real test that gets started up, and then you run some test, but then you have something like that is more or less tangled for the life cycle. So your containers would either per default start it up and shut down for each and every test run, or at least you have to wait if they're not running already, and you always have you're kind of tangling this life cycle, which I think is a challenge. So to begin with, let's try this out. And actually what I mostly do is I go on Maven. I kid you not, to just, you know, get dependencies. You containers, you can get that. Okay, there is the start test containers bomb, I think. You can get that in your IDE as well, but just to get, you know, latest versions and things like that, I typically do that. And then we can have a look at test containers in general, how the, because I saw how the documentation is doing that, the Maven dependencies. Yeah, that's another thing. Test containers, yeah, MySQL. So that's also a thing. Yes, so we need, what I would do at first, I would try out to run a Docker container for my database with test containers, so that we have a MySQL thing here, and then just see, you know, how that works in my POM. So at first I have to add the bill of materials. Do I get the dependency management? There we go. That is what I would need for the BOM. So let's try this out. POM XML for my, so that's actually, let me think. I typically do a system test separate. Yeah, I would just add it for the system test project. I have a separate project that just builds this up, which is actually, which makes more sense for me. Or let me think. Yeah, maybe let's try this out first. It might make sense to put it in the actual production project, because it might have a connection to the source code, and then I think that's also possible to just build test containers from that source. All right, and then dependencies down there, I actually increased the font size for you folks to just have this a little bit more in a nicer way. So test containers, then I can add test containers for, this looks somewhat broken, does it? I had a different, God, what is wrong here? I had the MySQL, yeah, there we go. I had a different dependency, because now I can use the dependency without a version, because we have the BOM. There we go, MySQL, and then there's always a shortcut that I forget. I think it's Control-Shift-O, yeah, for reloading. Oh, and by the way, because I got the comment a few times, let me do the following. I have a plugin that shows the keys that I'm pressing, because some folks complained that, you know, with all of my keyboard setups, that they wouldn't see which keys I'm actually pressing. So now, yeah, you can see what I'm doing here. And let's see how this is going. So it doesn't resolve the artifact. Let's see what's happening there, and then we can try out to run this. Maven reloads. I thought I did this, but maybe it take a while. Sometimes when yeah, now it works. When I have this issue, otherwise I just go to the command line and build the project here. But now it seems to work. All right, so let's try this out. Let's call new class something like test containers and see how that works. So there was framework integration manual container lifecycle. Yes, generic container. That was this. And yeah, there's also this type of test, and then I can start that up. I think that is the way that I want to go. And then yeah, we can have that in a base class, or directly I want to call them. Oh, the keys are behind me. Thanks for mentioning that. Good point. We can call this in that way. Yeah, MySQL container. So something like this. And I don't know if static is the best way, but we'll find out. MySQL container. Yep. And let's see if that would work. Okay, and it's deprecated. Interesting. Download sources. So that is the, okay, yeah, from Docker image. Yeah, that makes sense. And oh, by the way, I don't, yeah, that was already wrong. What did I say? It's not MySQL, it's Postgres actually. So let's do Postgres instead. Let's reload it because I was just thinking, okay, actually it's not MySQL. It's a Postgres. Let's see. Postgres SQL container. Great. I call this coffee shop DB, so that's going to be the database, yeah, DB, Postgres container, and then I would actually give a Docker image name. So now I just want to take the same thing that I would run here. So I literally try to copy that first to just, get to the same point that I were before here. And then I really don't know whether static is the best way. But anyway, what I would do is have a main method here and then say here, for example, then something like, I guess, start. If that doesn't do it already. And then I would need to have all of the, I think dependencies can be done. Yeah. So literally that's more or less the first time that I use test containers in this way. And hello back to the chat. And I think I need exposed ports for, you see what I did in my shell script. So basically I'm trying to copy this. I would give it a name and a network for the Docker network. I have an exposed port, and it might, let's see whether this works in that way. What does it return at exposed port? Oh, okay. So I need actually something like either static initializer, or I can actually do it in the main method here. Since this is something like a script that I'm running, I would argue it doesn't really matter, right? Because then I could just, it's something like just do one step after another. Docker network. Yeah. Okay. Network, not shared, but is it something by name or builder? Yeah, name, no, clear network, modifier, driver. Oh Jesus, string driver. It's actually a good way how to do that. So you already see this is usually the way why I say, well, just go with shell scripts. It's a little bit more pragmatic, but anyway. Let's try this out. Requirements, features. So I would say creating, networking. And as you see, I'm like you and everybody else. I just have to Google stuff and read the documentation. I hope you can read it here. Exposed ports. Oh, okay. So it says generic container, Docker image name, parse, and then with exposed ports. Oh, I could say with. If that's a Fluent API, that's better. Yeah. Ports, which with exposed ports, perfect. And these, we specify more ports. I would be interested in what it actually does if it says that is the same binding. So, oh, doesn't match the bytecode, really? I don't know. I'll just. Okay, inherit doc. Let's go one up. That is container an array of TCP ports. Yeah, so I actually don't want to only expose ports. I actually want to bind the port. I think mapped ports or something with exposed ports. No. That would be interesting to know whether that is actually the binding to the local host. Locally running. Yeah, random free port. That's what I don't want, because I can say I just want this port that is exposed there. Actually, for the database, it doesn't matter because we don't even need it locally exposed. Locally means a local host. You can go to localhost 8080, or in this case to the database. Actually, good question. And then you see localhost port. You see Google is your friend. So that's, I think, the same port to different host port, specified host port to be pretty much. Do not run anything. Random containers for every ports. Okay, I think what I remember that I've seen that you can use exposed ports and then you have to get it. Oh, bind ports. Okay, port binding. Otherwise, I would dynamically get the port and then, output it. It would be nicer for my system test actually to have a fixed port, which of course collides. Okay, then I have to set some port bindings, which is also fine. If I say, let's just try this for now and say with exposed port. Now, what's the problem here? Should give it back. Why are you complaining? Oh, generic container, really? It doesn't. I probably have to get the type somehow, otherwise generic container, parse, yeah, exposed ports. It does not have the, that's interesting. Otherwise I just add it here actually, add exposed port, set network. Let's try out here for network, advanced networking, that's what I said. Yeah, with network aliases, yeah, that's what I want. Actually, it doesn't matter which network it is. I can create a new network that works as well. So let's do this. Network. For me, I typically have a network that I always use. So when I do my testing and all of these things, but actually it doesn't matter which network it is, but it needs a network so I can have the alias, so basically the name or alias or whatever that's called, get a network alias, and then yeah, a list of strings. So in this case it is one that I call coffee shop DB, so the other containers can actually just access this via the name, that I don't need another network. Network. And then that should be it. There we go. Postgres user, Postgres password. I'm not actually sure what the default is. Just for the sake of the example, I actually set it in the same way. So that's also a learning from me, that I have then the same setup that I would otherwise do. How does this work? Set environment. Is it just a substring environment variable? Hello, where is the explanation? Okay, split. There's something wrong with my IDE, I hope, otherwise I would get some proper Java doc. Split it via this, so I think it is pretty much the same syntax that I can then just use and copy and paste here. There we go. So something like this. As you see, I'm a big fan of my Vim magic here, which just makes the whole thing faster to write for me. And of course I need a list of. There we go. So looks a little bit weird. I mean, you know, there's not much difference to the shell script actually that I would have. And yeah, I don't know. I would just say try it out. So again, I told you, I warned you, everything can go wrong here. And this is literally not scripted or prepared like some other stuff I'm doing. But I thought it could be interesting how I also just, you know, try out things like every one of us. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much as I expected. So what it does, we don't see anything, but I think that's good news. What I just executed is a shell script that enhances my my font and everything. Docker PS. Okay, nothing running. Okay, and it finished. Oh yeah, start, and probably it needs to run, I guess. Exec in container, got standard out. So this is what it does, and then I could say, well, just wait forever or something like that. Support Park Nanos, so that is quick fix. Just wait for, I don't know, 200 seconds. Run it again. Of course, that's not the ultimate example. Ultimately, I would treat this something as a script. So it's just a script that is conveniently written with the Java API, and then would say something like, you know, either you wait forever or you wait for keyboard enter or something like that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I thought this is, I heard about it, that is kind of like a Reaper container that just waits for, you know, kills the other one. Okay, we have a locally exposed port, which is a random port, which is not that cool, whatever. And in this case, we should be able to access it now. And again, my knowledge about Docker is much better than my knowledge about test containers. So I would just naively use the Docker APIs that I'm knowing to see what's going on here actually. That is what I'm interested in, networks. So it seems to create a new network, and yeah, that's nice. Coffee shop DB, that's probably the container ID. And then hopefully if I start a second one in the same network, they should be able to communicate with each other. So as the first very basic approach, what I now want to do, I want to stop this again. Wrong key combination, stop this again. and then actually build the whole thing, because I don't know when I built it last. This build script just builds the Docker image of the a latest image of my application to test it locally, and then I want to run this now as well in the other container. So I want to now fire up, that's the coffee shop DB first, and what I'm now interested in is how to model something like waiting, like how to model the dependency, because for me that is the benefit of using this test container API, because otherwise I could just use the shell script. But now I can say, well, just please wait for the other one, and it has the I understand it that it has the semantics. What does wait mean? So it actually waits for startup and things like that. So waiting for wait strategy. I don't know whether it's actually the wait strategy here or it just says it has a dependency on the other one, but we have a look at the documentation how this works. All right. Anyway, let's have another one that should now be a generic container, I guess. No, generic container. I would say so. Coffee shop DB. That is actually the coffee shop application. Generic container from probably a Docker image or something like that. Docker image name, remote Docker image, and now just naively I take the same what my application is. It's basically here just called coffee shop with latest tag, which usually wouldn't be that cool, but since we control this and just build it in the first place, then we do that. So in the chat, hi Sebastian, like your videos, thanks, I really appreciate it. Did you ever try running more complex things like embedded Kafka with test containers? No, I actually, as I said, this is literally the first in with shell scripts. So that is where for me it just shines, because I use Linux a lot and I'm really not a shell script expert, but for me it's just so much easier. And in this coding session, I actually wanted to change that a bit to say shell scripts for, where I say this is actually using Docker in a more sophisticated way, where I say, okay, actually run a different image and then connect to the running container with a Quarkus remote dev, where you can have the hot reload mechanism inside a running container. So that actually works. And with a script, you have to do, like some back and forth magic to make that work. So this would be super cool if we do this with test containers as well. And if so, I just started with Docker containers with shell scripts. Most actually have to expose a port. Let's do it 8080. Then in this, do it just the way that I did it before, to know the port that is going to be 8080 or 8001 or something like that. But in this case, let's leave it for that. Just to network alias, that's going to be only coffee shop. I'm now just trying to start the second one, and I think that's even it. Yeah, so that uses, no, that's the barista. That uses a different port, but so be it. And start. Coffee shop start. All right. Okay, so that has been stopped from before. And now I'd be interested in what happens. Just tuned in, had no idea. Yeah, I also have no idea literally what I'm doing. So I wanted to have this live coding session to just, show you how I'm preparing some stuff for some videos. So I wanted to do some upcoming things with showing different ways how to run tests, especially test environments, here test containers. And used to see compose versus test containers when setting up integration tests. Yeah, that's a good point to George. I usually see Docker Compose versus shell scripts actually. I know shell scripts, it sounds very, like pragmatic and low level, and there it works. And then if you do some more advanced things like, having some temporary files or some binding, it's just a little bit easy or more straightforward. Compose is, another step. It's a little bit more convenient. And Dimitri, hi Sebastian, hi back. Tell please about your Arch setup. What programs do you use with i3? Let's say IDE, and that's my terminal, and nothing else. And I have, like you saw, i3. That's my window manager, where I can switch back and forth. And for now, that's it. Right now I don't run anything else. And I can point you to some video course later where you see some more things that I typically run. Could not create a start container. Interesting. So what happens? Doesn't tell it. Container exit. Okay, it could be now. Yeah, I see. This might be the case. I just started it. No, started it again. It might be the case that now my application container is unhappy. So can I get the log output here programmatically? Programmatically, probably. Otherwise, okay. Docker logs. So you see, I'm a command line person. Okay. Yeah, that's what I expected. Authentication failed with Postgres. Okay. It didn't work. Or if somebody has test containers knowledge, we can see this, how we set them. Or the application actually uses some Postgres. If that is correct, database Postgres, that should be there as well. Drop and create, yes. Okay. Fatal authentication failed for user Postgres. No, the user is correct. Default here is wrong. Do we have issues with the stream? No, it's still working. I'm just checking the, yeah. All right. Okay, so let's check this. Environment, there we go. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was wrong. Magic number, so and so much. So it probably needs multiple of these, I guess, of the ones that I was using here. So instead of that, it's basically saying list of, I would now just, what's that? Duct tape. That's a funny name. Somebody Easter egg what I just saw. Okay, let's try this one. Try again, and then we just, see what happens. I thought it's my internet. No, I had some loading issues right now. I think it was the setup here with YouTube. But loading is a good idea, yeah. 1 a.m. here in Kuala Lumpur. Oh, that's cool. Can see the train thoughts, feels like pairing with the developer. Yeah, if you just have any questions or, this is supposed to be a very relaxed format, then just, let me know. So shell scripts as well. Yeah, so the shell scripts that I'm typically using, it's just literally because that's the most pragmatic way for me. So that's, my go-to way. Do I think any developer should know shell scripting? Well, sort of. I mean, I wouldn't be too dogmatic about knowledge that you have to know and things like that. But in my mind, it's just super helpful because it is the easiest way to automate stuff. What you use as a developer, right? It's like even if you only use your shell to say Maven build it and git status or something like that, even that can already be automated. That you say build my project with Maven and then take the files and copy it, or start my Docker container already, and you can be like super pragmatic and super fast by just using a bash script by pasting the commands into it, and then you have some automation, right? So I think that's just a very cool and pragmatic way to do that in this way. Having some troubles. Yeah, I also have some troubles. I hope it's now better. I have a wired connection here. I thought, yeah, no, I hope it's fine. Knowledge with shell scripting is very important automation tasks, exactly. Doesn't mean we should look for alternative, shouldn't look for, exactly, I 100% agree, Mirko, good point. That's exactly it. That's exactly my point, to be pragmatic. Shell scripting, yeah, definitely. And then if you find some alternatives where you can have, a nice API or whatever, then that's really nice. Okay, array index out of bounds. There we go. So something is wrong here, set environment. I'm just trying to figure this out with environment. Okay, so there's a map, which makes more sense to me. Why doesn't this work with coffee shop DB environment? Add environment? Okay, let's do this. Add environment and then, or with environment. Jesus. Okay, add environment. That should be straightforward. Then we use this, add environment, this. I would not know what I would do without Vim, actually. Once you get used to it, that's just, so fast. All right, add environment, Postgres user, add environment. Run this again, and then see what's happened. What I'm actually interested in is, just for the sake of the exercise, I'm trying to see how I get the logs. Okay, log consumer, that's awesome. Output frame, yep. Frame, whatever that is. System out, frame. my point is really don't be intimidated by quote-unquote senior developers. I mean, we're all just, you know, trying out stuff. We don't know what we're doing, literally. And is it now running? No. And then we just see from there. Okay, my other container isn't started. Okay, just kill it and try it again. It would be cool if this log consumer just runs here directly in my IDE. Let's see if that's the way how this works. If not, then I just use the IDE. There we go. Use the command line. Okay. Authentication failed for Postgres. Okay, you know what? Let's... Yeah, well, that was not the point. See how this works to string. I don't know. Probably not. With log consumer. Attach an output consumer container startup, enabling standard out to be output usually one line, possibly more. Yep, and how do I... Oh, get bytes. Okay, get UTF-8 string. Perfect. Frame get hello. I thought that's... It's not an object, it's an output frame. IntelliJ, why don't you know the type? Yeah, there we go. Okay, there's something wrong here. Incompatible character. No, I thought log consumer is a consumer for... Yeah, that's what I'm doing. No. Output frame. Something wrong here. Consumer, I get this. Interesting. Any resource recommendations for shell scripting noobs? Yeah, Google. I mean, literally, the amount of times I had to Google the if syntax is like laughable. Wait a second. If else. I know one site that was quite of helpful. I think it's this one. Linux command line and some, you know, that is kind of like a tutorial. I think it was this. Yeah, that was kind of helpful. tldp.org. But then, you know, it's literally, I have to Google it every single time when I say, for example, bash, I don't know, string, substring. So that's always what I have to see. And they were, was it this one? No, I think that's also, yeah. No, this site was pretty good. I ended up on this one quite often, TLDP. And then just see from there. But actually, instead of, you know, reading a long time for just into shell, I would literally say, okay, what you want to do, and then just take it from there and Google the problems, like literally. Okay, what's wrong here? I mean, this should be a consumer output frame. Yeah, that's what I try to do. Consumer output frame for the consumer. And then I'm trying to provide the consumer. Why don't you let me? Okay. If something like that fails, where I cannot just explain what's happening here, then I try to assign a variable, and then, you know, my IDE has to fail and tell me what's actually wrong here. Yeah, so nothing is wrong. I don't understand it. All right. No. Unless there is like an ambiguous method call. But anyway, since this is just a test, I leave it like that. And then hopefully we can have this up and running. And see once that is there, Docker logs. Yeah, I mean, we saw that this is still the arrow. Okay, now we see it here. Perfect. Okay, now it's cut in half. Print without line. Okay, there we go. So it seems that either the Postgres database is started up with the wrong environment, or the application config is wrong. And I think it's the database, because the application config shouldn't change. Postgres user, Postgres password, Postgres. Add environment. So what is wrong here? We started afterwards, so that should be fine, I guess. And add environment key value. I mean, that sounds pretty straightforward to me. Add environment to be passed to the container. Yeah, consider using for building in a Fluent style. Yeah. Okay, so why doesn't it work like this? No, not bash. So So that's what I had here with environment, magic number so-and-so. Command doesn't matter unless I'm starting it afterwards. So I thought that should be fine. If it has issues that I have the Postgres container already defined here, then I would say we could try this out, but it might be with environment. It says generic container, which is annoying because then I have the wrong type, and I don't quite understand why this is a generic container. It should be map environment. Okay, what we can have, what I typically do, so if I have this issue with containers that I run in a command line, then I say just, execute some other command and see where the issue is. Or I say here, I think I can specify a command, and then I just specify the command, well, please print the environment, and then let's see what's happening. Because, oh, and then I need a log output. Coffee shop DB. I think it's already stopped. Oh God. Okay, wait a second. I have too many containers. What I do now, I just stop them. I docker clean. This is a nice alias that just cleans up all of the crappy containers that I don't need anymore. And now it's almost empty. Okay. What is this? Docker remove. Docker remove. Docker remove. Now it's almost clear. And then in case, the reason why I've done that, in case the container fails, it's still there. And then I can get the log, because I think now it will be stopped quite quickly. And then we can actually have a look whether the environment variables are set as expected. And then I can take it from there to just, so what I'm doing right now, I'm just trying to, yeah, there we go. I'm trying to debug where the error comes from that my, oh, interesting. Yeah, there you go. So it did not use the environment variables. For that reason, Postgres used the wrong credentials. So why did you not like my environment variables? I don't get it. The command, it should be executed afterwards. If they set the environment variable, then that should be fine. But it doesn't take it? Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Because the command, I don't know. Do I have to specify? That doesn't make sense. And so the reason why I typically then just say, yeah, well, now it couldn't be started, that's clear. The reason why I then say I just go for shell scripts was, then I know what's actually happening. If you know the Docker API, then it's a little bit more straightforward. Maybe in case there's some test container fan boys and girls watching, then just let me know what my issue is here. So the point is I add an environment and then I try to start. What I can do now is just to say Postgres container. What I can say is that this should be a generic container that I then don't care, and then I can use this Fluent API. Let's try this to just add my environment with n, something like this, right? And then I don't need that. And then let's see whether this command actually works. So then we have this other output. By the way, reason why I always like this mode of operating is that you see what I also am telling you in case you watched my video courses on testing, that there we go, doesn't work, that we need fast feedback. So I can just say I change something and then I immediately want to see at least the result. So then you can just move somewhat faster. They recommended using with environment. Yeah, shouldn't be difference. Yep, didn't you do it that way? It's just an assumption. Yeah. So I expected that regardless of what the recommendation is, that in both ways at least it sets the environment and then it works. But for some reason I don't quite get why I set the environment Postgres user and then it says it's the other one. Sometimes the script that runs the container does weird things to actually reset the environment variables, which I think is very nasty. But in this case, I'm actually doing the same. So I don't get, because this should literally be the same to say dynamically set this environment variable and then just start it with the default command. And that's what I'm doing. I mean, literally, I run this image, right? I mean, I have a lot of people who, you know, can testify in the chat. No expert here, but isn't there with username and with pass? Yeah, that's a good point, Mirko. Thanks. There should be, yes. Pass. Yeah, good point. Because, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. There should be a Fluent API, and it might be even the case that it uses a different mechanism, like a different command. Yeah, good point. Postgres. Like this one does. And then in this case, I actually can change it to Postgres because I don't use the other API. I don't need this. I don't need that. And well, then I don't need the environment. Then I can just start the container. Does it still run? No. And then I can try to connect. So if I start it in this way, and once it is started up and it would work, then I can actually try to connect to it from my shell. So you see, I'm a command line person. I always, you know, try to validate things on the terminal, which I think is just, you know, kind of faster. Oh, there we go. This worked. You see why? That's the application output, and it says, well, relation orders does not exist, please create it. So that's just a warning. And then it actually ran it. That's cool. Okay, let's see. But one after another, now I should actually be able to connect to my database. I can use PostSQL. Yeah, I always have to see host should be localhost port or big port. I always have to see the syntax. I always get this wrong. Yeah, unknown option. It should be port. Invalid option U. Oh, there we go. Just try it so many times that it works. And yeah, describe database, describe table. Yeah, perfect. So what I did, I connected to my local Docker container via the command line with, you know, 10 attempts to run it, but now it works. And bonus question, do you know the command to access this? It's because it's, I think, oh no, actually it is exit, but also there's a way, it's \Q, I think, yeah. So talking about, you know, like user experience or self-explanatory APIs or whatever. And now I have my application running. Where is it? Coffee shop. With this weird port, and then I should be able to say, please, yes, now it works. There we go. So in case you watched my testing video course, this is now the same thing that runs here. Awesome. So what I did, I have my application that runs my orders, and then I can actually order some coffee. Orders post, no, something like this. Yep. In case you're wondering what I'm doing, shell aliases, I really recommend that just to get faster on the command line. Type espresso. So in case you're wondering what I'm doing here, that is just the same contents of my testing video course, Origin Colombia, but now because this session is about test containers. Nice. Okay, that's cool. Orders. Okay, so it worked. I could create something in my locally running container that is connected to my Postgres that has been set up by test containers. Awesome. Now, next step is to start the third one, which is the barista. Because then now it internally, well, I actually stopped it, but you will see that there are probably some exceptions internally because it tries to connect to the barista and it can't because it's, well, not running. And let's do this as well. So thanks, Mirko, for this tip. I expect that under the hood it uses something else, not reusing the environment variable, which is why I have to use the Fluent API, which is better anyway. And trial and error, yes, always. To catch all my shortcuts, replay the video at a quarter of the speed. Yeah, you can replay, watch it again. And if you have some other questions, you know, just ask. But actually, I've did some videos on, you know, keyboard usage. It's literally what I'm using all the time. So it's, you know, shell aliases, it's Vim and IDEA, it's some live templates to just get faster. But ultimately, that's it. But once you get more used to it, you know, it just looks super fast. But actually, it's just, you know, it's like playing an instrument and just, you know, practicing. And if you do it many times, then you get super fast at it. All right, Postgres container, and the other one, no, let's copy this one. The other one is also a generic container, barista from, yeah, I don't know, barista or something like this. Where is it? There we go. Quarkus testing. Why are all these windows open? There we go. Okay, now what I want to try, I actually would like to set the dependency. Yes, depends on, because that is ultimately the benefit that I want to have with using test containers, like, you know, using this Fluent API, that I actually can say, well, not just to wait and by sheer luck you're after the database, but literally tell it that you need the dependency on the database and on the barista. And actually it's the other way around. The coffee shop application needs the dependency on, yes, the startable of the barista and coffee shop database. There we go. All right, and barista, then start it. Do you know the feeling when you program something and you're about to run it and you're like, there's no way this is gonna work? And yeah, I have this feeling quite often actually. And oh, at exposed port, yeah, that is that gonna work? Yes, because it uses the name, it uses barista under the hood, which you could see in the properties. So in case, no, not you, the properties, in case you're wondering whether how this connection comes, that the coffee shop goes to the barista is via this URL, which is being used in the client. And that works because of the network configuration that we do right now. Set network. So at first I do pretty much this, and then I gonna improve it. Set network alias, which is not a coffee shop but a barista. Yeah, looks good to me, right? Let's try it out. Docker ps run. Boom. Hey Oleg, thank you. Glad you can join. Do some test containers here. No Graal VM, unfortunately. Although I use Quarkus, but usually on the JVM mode. And today, containers, test containers, and some fancy stuff. Okay, that looks good. A lot of containers. So barista. I think it doesn't really say much, the barista container. It literally just starts up Quarkus. 8080, that's good. Now, what I want, so I still don't really like the mode that I don't have a fixed port. I think I'll fix that later, just because I have to look it up each and every time, but so be it. Post reverse search. There we go. Create new coffee, create new coffee. Show the coffee, yep. And now, what my application does, it has a timer internally, and then after a while it connects to the barista. Well, it doesn't. So let's see, there's probably something wrong. Oh, wait a second, Docker logs. It should have the coffee shop name, no? It doesn't. Oh, it is using a network alias. Ah, interesting. So because of the alias, I typically give a container name which has the same effect, but then I cannot specify it by a name, an unknown host barista. That's interesting. It should use barista. If it uses unknown host, I don't understand that. If it says set network and use the network alias of, is it this container? Barista, the barista, I don't have a typo here. Then actually the coffee shop should be able to do that here. To use 8080, barista 8080 to actually access the barista, which I don't understand why. So let's see what is happening here. So again, when I'm typically don't know, not Docker network inspect, Docker inspect. When I don't know what to do with Docker, I typically go to these commands and see, you know, ps inspect, trying to see what's happening. Oh, okay, that's wrong. Bridge. It's not a bridge. It should be this network that we just created, you remember? And no, that's not correct. That's not correct. Why you don't work properly? New network, yes. Now set the network. probably it again says I just, prefer the other Fluent API. Alphonse, would you go integrate test containers to your unit integration test workflow for this coffee shop app in this session? That is the plan. It's actually the plan to just try it out, how to start this up with a Fluent API in a standalone application. Why? To separate the workflows from or the life cycles from the test to the test environment. And then what I would do, I would actually, well, it's okay. Now we should be back. Actually thinking if that is the issue with my network. I hope not. But we have two issues with the network. First of all is the internet connection to YouTube, and the second one is the Docker network. So a lot of network issues here. So as you saw, my issue was with the Barista container. The network is not accepted or not set or not used or whatever. And for that reason, it actually does something different. So with the coffee shop, it worked. I could tell because it could connect to my database. So the network per se was working. I don't know why it didn't catch up here. Set network, and it should reuse that. I really don't know why. Add expose barista. This uses the generic container of this barista. I would actually just try to kill all containers and do it again. To be honest, there's nothing running here. So let's just start again the main method. And then see, it could be some concurrency issues of when I just added the network. But other than that, I'm a little confused why otherwise it would not add the network to my Postgres and the other containers. So that's the Postgres. Yes, it has a proper network, correct. My coffee shop, Docker inspect, has the network. Yes, correct. And doesn't have the network. Jesus Christ, why don't you add the network here? It's a bridge network. That is the usual network that you probably know with this IP. And well, doesn't have the important thing, it doesn't have the alias, and this is why the other container can actually not talk to it. But I don't know why it doesn't have the network here, because I told it to get the network. Set network, add exposed port, yes. Barista, set network. Coffee shop, set network alias, yeah. Barista. Log consumer, doesn't matter, and then start. So I don't see why this should not be the case. So it starts a container, it says generic container. Well, I don't actually see an issue here. It's pretty much the same what it has there. It says this depends on the other one, which is fine. It probably, I guess I should start it up front otherwise. But I mean, you could see that it could be started. I don't quite get it. Muddy, someone could tell me what he's coding right now. Test containers. I'm trying to run Docker containers instead of the command line. I'm using test containers, the Java API. And that's what I'm trying. I'm just reading the other things in the chat. Lost you a little bit with your answer. Would you go integrate test containers? Yeah, so the thing, what you ask about, or how I understand it, would you integrate test containers to your unit integration test workflow for this coffee shop app in this session? Yes, so I would not integrate it in the test directly. So let me show you a test just for everybody to understand. Something like this. This is how I like to structure my system test. System test means that it already has a running application. So why is it already running? To be faster in turnaround, I don't have to wait for startup. I actually keep it running forever during my coding session. And this under the hood connects to something via HTTP here, for example. So to localhost or whatever port. We do this then later. And this is only a plain unit test on or plain JUnit test. It's not a unit test, it's system, but on purpose to just run it faster. And now up front in a different life cycle, I run my containers. So at first I ran them in a shell script, something like this, and now I want to use test containers for it and see how, nicely I can use the Fluent Java API for that. And now the issue having try another port. Yes, so the port should be fine because it says the exposed port internally, that should be 8080. It does not use the network. So the issue is the network is actually not added. I don't quite know why, but with the inspect port, is it still running? Let's see. yeah, stop and rerun, whatever. Yeah, just stop everything. And okay, so Postgres, this one, barista, that's the interesting one. So the problem is not the port. I don't care about the local port. The problem is the network. Now it works. I don't know why. Before the network wasn't there. Well, I don't know. What was weird before the depends on was this depends on the barista, and now I'm starting it before, which of course makes sense. And yeah, now that looks good actually. Let me check out the logs. Where are we? No, there. Okay, so this is the logs of my application. Looks good. And I can say post with, where is it? Too many ports, with this port. So please use that port to create a new coffee and create another coffee. And then say, okay, now get the list of coffees. Oh, okay, so you see finished. Now it works, it updated the status. Awesome. So that is the point how the application updates the status to use this barista backend and then write into the database. And that means that now, first of all, the system test setup works. So what we did in this almost hour of session is to replicate basically that shell script to say we start this up to be up and running. Now what I could do, I always had to use this random port to get it and use it on a command line. I would of course need to pass it to the system test, which I can do using some scripts, because my system test, it uses properties. So I can say, for example, maven-d coffee shop test host, blah, 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 blah. But it's a little bit annoying because it would need to, get the port first. So that would be one thing, that this, for example, prints out the port, which then will be added. Or I now actually want to have a fixed binding. I don't care if that's a best practice or not, but it actually makes things easier for us if we say we only run one system test at a time. And then this is, just easier. Port, expose host port. Okay. With network, yep. With network alias, yep. And where is the port? If I say advanced options, maybe container labels, customizing modules. So I'm actually trying to, I think I had this before in another Stack Overflow that I was looking at. So expose ports is something else. Mapped port. Okay. It would retrieve the ports at runtime. I don't know if that's the best practice. It tells me here, it's saying with the IP address, but actually I don't want to do that. I want to say I specifically always want that specific port. So I have like 8001, 8002, and I know which application that is, just to make it easier, actually. Advanced networking with network. So what I would do is something like coffee shop port. Add exposed ports, get exposed ports, get port binding. I think it is a port binding. To have, actually see how this looks in the set port binding. Well, yeah, thank you. There's something wrong with my, with the mapping of this thing. Port binding. Okay, so a port binding would be, just to be very naive, because again, I have no clue what I'm doing. A port binding would be this, localhost port container port, at least in the Docker world. I can actually just try this out naively and see what happens. And see if the port binding now works with the running port. That would be already the quick fix. As the other container was waiting, it messed up networking. I think so too, yeah. Actual order of starting, even if you put depends on in the declaration. Yeah, makes sense. It would actually be cool if it would not matter, right? Because you just start, and then, dear container, figure out yourself, who needs to start first. If you're waiting for somebody else and just wait forever until the other one is started, that would be my naive assumption, but what do I know? And okay, now there's no port binding. But let's see. Yeah, maybe from, you can ask a nice person from test containers how this is, oh no, not logs, inspect, sorry, how this is done. So now I changed the port binding. We actually have no port binding now. That was not the deal, but let's see what happened here. So I was trying to do port binding, this and this. Maybe we have to have another syntax. So the port binding, I cannot see anything here. There's no network. Oh, 88, okay, host port. Oh, probably it wants this 0.0.0.0 thing. We can figure that out. So in case you're wondering, this is the Docker inspect JSON. So whenever with a running Docker container you want to see stuff, just Docker inspect container ID or container name, and you see a lot of info, which is kind of cool. Yeah, so this did not work. Oh, now interesting. Caused by wait exception, timeout waiting for container. So this should be listening. Okay, that's good actually, because it said, well, you told me that you have this port and stuff like that, but now you didn't start because I think I said expose port or something like that. And then it failed, which I wanted because now it couldn't start actually. What I would do in order to debug this, I have an exposed port. So now I just print exposed port. There's a get, and then, you know, please print the list of integers to just actually see very naively what's happening. Because if I run this, then it uses this random port, what we have seen before, and I can just, you know, set it accordingly, just in a very naive way. And then we figure out if there's a nicer Java API. Dominican Republic, Jug presence. Hola. That's super cool. How many people are watching? And oh, exposed ports. Sorry, that was wrong. What was wrong? Of course, it's not exposed ports, it's port bindings. That's what I wanted to do. Stop everything and try again. Again, that's why fast feedback is that important, that even faster than I can talk and just, you know, rerun everything, and then I get the result. And this is actually why I do this in the first place, so I don't have to wait these few seconds until everything is started, until I see a result. So that's, okay, port binding is empty. Great. So Google to the rescue again. Different host port, how to specify, why you should never use fixed ports. Yeah, I know, I want to do it anyway. Sorry, not sorry. No, doesn't look like it to me. The exposed ports, that's what I actually had before. Okay, new port binding, I think that's what I would use. So that's a kind of fluent API. Let's check this other post as well. Otherwise it would be with port binding. And then I specify, I guess, yeah, something like this, and then bind port to whatever, expose port or something like this, which looks good to me. Yeah, I know, it can be wrong. It also makes things easier. Okay, stop this again. And try this coffee shop. Port binding, set port binding. Wait a second. Okay, I probably need the Fluent API. But that's a little bit confusing that a few things are not available there and others are with ports. No, hello, binding. Binding. Why is it? Interesting. Here it is a list of string and here it is a Java API. Consumer, generic container with exposed ports, consumer with port bindings. Yeah. Should be really avoided. The recommended way, yeah, I know. And then get the actual port, yeah, I know. But what if I want, for some reason, to just specify the port anyway and say I know that I want a host port 8080. And if I say new exposed, well, it is not a port, it is a port binding. That's what I would like to have. And the interesting okay, let's try the other thing again. There we go. coffee shop port binding, right? And then if I say new port, is there something like a port binding? Yes, there is. Okay. Binding. Oh, okay. Bind port 8080. Yes. And just to remind you, I've never TCP 8080. I've never done that before. It's literally just, you know, figuring out the stuff. Oh, get binding. Yeah, and then I have the binding. And now, oh, get host port spec. Okay, cool. And this is probably then a list of this whatever I just did. So nobody can read that, right? Okay, new port binding. Let's do this here and expose port and get binding and get host port spec. So yeah, a little bit more readable kind of. So bind the port 8080 to TCP 8080. Yes, makes sense. Get the binding and get the specification to. Now I'm actually curious. Just show me how it looks like. And try it again. Interesting. So it definitely, you know, use the recommended way by test containers. I think that makes life easier. You look like you have some Dogecoin in your portfolio and you're a millionaire. Well, no, I'm not a millionaire. I'm a programmer. Looks like you need an exposed port to be able to use a port binding. No, I couldn't even set the port binding. Or is this a question or an answer or a statement? You could probably uncomment set port binding. Am I? Oh, look. Number format exception null. Okay. Well, 8080. Yeah, that was not my plan. Okay, let me read your comment again. You need an exposed port to be able to use a port binding. I thought I did by doing this expose port, say 8080, like the exposed one. That should be the case. Yes, if not, you might be correct as well that I say I need to expose this first. This could set port binding and add exposed first. Yeah, I think so. This was wrong. Let's see if whether you're correct with the add exposed ports. This might be the case. Yeah, and I thought the post binding is something like 0008080 to 8080 TCP or something like that, like similar what the output of Docker PS does, but no, it doesn't look like it, because host port spec uses this. So this is what I just printed, but that's just 8080. I mean, that's not a proper, yeah, no. So it did something, but it's basically the same, but I don't want that. I want localhost 8080. So I think the port binding here is still wrong. Okay, let's see this piece of code. Port binding 8080. That's what I'm doing with exposed port 80. Okay, 8080, yes. With port bindings, new port bindings. And this actually does not work. Did you see that actually the port binding just says new port binding, but this wants a list of strings? That is a little bit confusing, because then I say new port binding, that's what I would like to create. And then I guess parsed. Oh, okay, looks like this. Yeah, that's what I would want. I mean, I can just write this in a string. Maybe that works better. But, well, I guess it's not the recommended way. Get binding, what does this do? Okay, got just the binding of the port binding, and the binding is, maybe the binding needs more. Get binding or the exposed port. And in either way, the binding is just 80. Okay, now I understand. Host port, port binding, bind port, bind IP and port, maybe we think there. It's really interesting question, because what we saw here, that it wants something like parse port binding, and maybe it tries to parse that using something like this syntax, which would be, I guess, 80, what I did before, basically, 8080 to 8080, and in this case, then just it would bind all of the network interface. So Let's look for some more information. It is just interesting that the, no, we had that before. It's just interesting that the API differs somewhat, because at some point it said port binding in the, here in Stack Overflow or in GitHub, and that doesn't accept it. It accepted a list of string. And expose port. So this is what puzzles me, Consumer with post binding, yes, generic container, create container command modifier, okay. Yep. Let's see, test containers, localhost port binding. If there is a better example. If you have integrating testing, okay. If you have some other recommendations, please let me know. Okay, and just container IP address, good. First map port, yeah, that's what I don't want. I actually want to set it. Exposed ports, yeah, waiting for no. Yeah, I want to use CC thumb, yeah, no. I want to set it myself with expose port, map port, nope. Okay, Docker run, yes, that's what I want. It's like the equivalent of what I'm doing. And with expose ports, yes, port binding, okay. Get host, get map port, yes. Okay, get host, map port, yeah, under test. With expose ports. Can I say this in? Nope. Because you know what port will be running on, you can reach it from your test. Yeah, will be allocated, yes. Daemon will want to know, yeah. With expose port, but that doesn't do it. It will wait for map to start listening. Get mapped port, container get map port. Yeah, but I don't have this right now. I mean, I could reuse the information, but that's exactly the point. I want to set it myself. New port binding. And the only thing that is just a little bit puzzling is that this, I mean, first, wait a second. That's also annoying that it doesn't show me the correct, but I think that's my fault or the IDE's fault. It doesn't show me the correct source code. Binding, set port binding. Well, it did. Are you telling me you have no Java talk on this? What the port binding is here. So I could just try that again, naively saying I want something like this, right? I mean, that's literally what what it outputs. So the other one I already tried that 80808080. This was my first assumption, because this is what the Docker PS or the Docker run uses. So just to improve on my system test example, if I would like to use these fixed ports, so you already see this is a little bit just challenging. Okay, yeah. To be honest, let's just, I don't know, try again. Error parsing. Oh, expose port parse. This is what we had before, right? Ah, parse, split. Why is there no documentation here? Split, yeah, expose port, parse int. Okay, inner protocol, parse. Okay, interesting. So we have parse int first place slash this one. Serialized. Parse the textual representation as used by the Docker CLI on an exposed port. But it splits on a slash, not on a colon. I don't get that. I mean, I can just try to port. Oh, protocol. Oh, TCP. Got it. then I might have something like 8080/TCP2, I guess. Let's see. So as you know, probably the glue code and all the networking and everything is always the hardest thing to get up and running, right? It's like, 20% of getting your business logic, and then just 80% of, getting everything to run. Number format exception. Okay, apply, parse int, get bound port numbers, wait for strategy, get liveness check. No. I'm actually just trying to, okay, this doesn't work. Nope. Okay, what I'm now trying to do, I'm trying to see if there is a better documentation of the API, because this is a little bit weird that my IDE doesn't do the proper connection here. And what I now want to just check out is whether there is a better documentation. So this is test containers, and then set port binding. All right, core, I guess. Main test containers, yep, generic container. Port bindings. Set up port binding array. Add fixed this. Add fixed exposed port. Protected. Interesting. Doesn't want me to use that. String format. There we go. So I don't know what is happening. I kind of have to re-engineer the setup of this this thing. I suspect they do this to just force you to use the other recommendation. So it just makes it extra hard to set up fixed ports, because I think I cannot add fixed exposed ports exactly here on host port, container port. That's exactly what I want to do. And in terms of where is this called, only here. So probably it is called from somewhere internally, and I can just not do this myself. Fixed, yeah. Let's say fixed port, and then we'll just complain. This won't work with protected, but basically that's what I'm trying to do. And here, port bindings add string format. Okay, host port, yes, colon, container port. Interesting. So now we, I think, have it. It's this, right? Host port, colon, container port, /TCP. All right, let's try. So that is a little bit annoying that you have an API. So I would say don't do that, right? If you offer an API that consumes a string, that at least, say what, either it should be a properly typed API, or say what the string, does, or which format you would expect in a case in something like this, because, that is not much better if I would just say Docker run and, Docker run do something, but I also still have to know the API, right? So in my eyes, that is a little bit misleading. So why on earth do you not add the binding here? Oh, Jesus. Okay. So it started up, but it didn't use the proper binding. It probably exposed port as well. Again, let's see. Internally, although if I use Docker on the command line, it never matters. So I never really expose ports. I just say they just listen on the specific port, or I use the explicit port binding to 8080/8080, and then it knows that something is listening. But in this case, yeah, let's see. Fixed port is something we don't want to advertise, hence no docs. So it's intentional that you can't find everything. Yes. I mean, you can even go further and kind of try to make your API obscure, like, I don't know, parsing some weird strings, adding some shift left, shift right operators just to make it more obscure. Security by obscurity. Oh, there we go. Nice. So even though they didn't want us to, I now managed to localhost 8080 success. Awesome. So don't tell anyone of the test container team, but we managed to get this up and running. And now typically my system test is 8001. Sorry, 8002. My coffee shop is 8001. Where is it? No, that is coffee shop. Barista is 8002. Add exposed port. Set port binding. Barista 8002. I think I'm correct. Yes, Barista 8002. Coffee shop 8001. Why? Because on localhost I have some things set up like my system test, which of course I can change, but just now for the time being. Yes. Still running. Docker, well, I could actually stop this test here. This would be nicer than just killing it, but yeah, stop and rerun. And now I can actually run this, and then finally I can try to run my system. Well, not my system test yet. I can, because the system test actually, that's level 2. The system test expects not the barista, but wiremark. So that's the level 2 of the whole thing, that we build it together with a wiremark instead, which should be easy because it's just swapping the image. And then the system test will actually connect to it, which is why the system test needs a fixed exposed port as well. And then level 3, which is now then super cool, is to connect the whole thing in containers with the Quarkus development mode, which sets up this super fast hot reload mechanism that I'm trying to do here. And this now then becomes a little bit trickier because we have to start our container a little bit differently with a different image here that uses a different. Well, I guess we just have to build the container up front, but I think it also works with Docker files, this kind of testing container stuff. And then we expose also the debug port and then trying to run it with a remote dev. Let's see how much time we have, whether we get to that today. But that's cool, I think. All right, there we go. Now we have the correct ports, 8001 and 2, which now means that I can actually access the whole thing like as before. Like I always showed you in my videos and things. If I can type correctly, we see the health check. Yeah. And now I should be able to just say create order test. So this won't work because of the barista system. Barista expects that wiremark is running under this connection, and then we're trying to configure it. But I think I have some sort of smoke test that actually just connects to it without doing things, which would not fail. Let me just quickly look that up. I think I have some IT, which is, yeah, smoke IT. That just, so this one is very similar of a test. It literally just sees whether it's up and running, it goes to the health checks, checks if it's true. It tests the orders, the existing ones. So this one would basically just check if the system is up and running at all. So that's a very, basic smoke test. And of course it does because it is running. We know that, and we have that here. Awesome. The other thing that I want to fix is, of course, this little hack that we say, please wait for 200 seconds, which won't end well. So let's, there we go. Where are we? I'm confused with my Control F2. Yeah, already stopped. So we could start this again, and then the question is just, what is a good way to keep this up and running? Is there some recommendation here? I think this uses a Spring app, which is why it's still running. Yeah. Otherwise, I just do something like, either wait or try to connect to the output and then wait forever. So I don't think that's that important. How we do it. So that's the first improvement that we would have. So basically wait forever until it's until we terminate it, or until we hit enter or whatever. And then we can see that we swap the image. Let's do this first as a last thing for today after this stream, I would say. And then at least we can run the other system test. So in theory, that's super simple because we say that will just be swapped with whatever wiremark container I was running. Too many windows open. Here. No, not here. Here. wire mock. There we go. And there. And if everything is correct, then this should already be it, right? Because we basically now swap the Docker image. That's the cool thing about the container abstraction. Yeah, not you, the other test. Is that we can just swap the image, which doesn't change anything for our network setup because it uses the same ports and everything. It expects HTTP, and now our system test, the one that I want to run, expects that we have WireMock running instead of the barista, and then it can actually control it under the hood. Need to hurry up, Todd, or this starting soon? Yes, so this is the last thing that I want to show you. Actually, 1.5 hours I think is enough for this live stream. That's literally the first time I was doing it, and I'm really looking forward to your responses, like, you know, whether you like this format or whatever, and feel free to ask any more questions if you have some. So this is really just, you know, me coding something, and you know, anybody can watch. And yeah, really appreciate that you actually took the time to watch this. And what I wanted to do, yes, run the test, and that's the first last thing for today, because also here it's getting late. And well, start small with create verify order. Now the thing is, and that was my plan, that in the IDE I run two things. The first one is my test environment, which uses this Java, and well, now it looks good. And the second was, now it's stopped already, was the test. And I expect that actually the list of orders, yes, now contains one test that has been one order that has been created by the test. And now this one, this test is the interesting one. If you watched my testing stuff, this is the one that both uses my coffee shop and the barista. It connects to the WireMock and says, well, please answer in this way, and so on and so forth. And it takes a little bit longer because it does the ping pong of checking for the different status transitions. And now you saw that, awesome, this worked. So it actually now used 3 containers, barista, coffee shop, and the database. And I set up these containers in with test containers. So using this Java API, probably if somebody of the test container committers would get a heart attack because of my misuse of all of these bindings and whatever. But at least that works already. What I liked is that you could set the dependency, and that you had a fluent API for setting something like username and password. So thanks again for that hint in the chat. And you know, then we just see, you know, which one would be easier, for example, to then further on use. So what how I see it, I said this in my courses a few times, is that I definitely would encourage you to separate the life cycles here, to just be able to run this in a, you know, more flexible way, to get fast feedback, to keep the environment up and running, and all of that. So yeah, this has to be done more often. Yeah, thanks. We managed. Yes, we did. So you helped, all of you in the chat, and I really appreciate it. And that's cool if you learned something new. So then let's do it again. And yeah, I will just this was basically the preparation for creation of some content. So I will, you know, at some point post this just as a alternative for Docker Compose and shell scripts and all that, and see what the test container folks are saying. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. So everybody, thanks a lot for joining this coding session, and I hope you have a prosperous day. So thank you, and bye-bye.